Terrific, Michael. Thanks very much. Look, fantastic to be here today. I want to say thank you to Trevor and to Maggie, who are two amazing candidates. It's great to be here with Harry as well, who's doing his carpentry apprenticeship at the moment, so he's probably happy to be not on the tools today, but here with us. And look, there are many examples right across the country, young Australians we've spoken to who have just given up on the dream of home ownership under Labor. The fact is that Labor has created a migration boom, which has created a housing crisis, and we're going to clean that mess up. We're going to help young Australians realise the dream of home ownership again. Our $5 billion plan, which helps supply, increase about 500,000 homes coming to the market in estates like this, where we help with critical infrastructure like water and sewerage. We're going to put in place a 2-year ban for foreign buyers from competing against young Australians at auctions and from taking those homes that should be lived in by young Australians. We're going to make sure that we can support the workforce, so putting in place incentives for builders and for tradies otherwise to employ apprentices and trainees and build the workforce up so that we can construct the homes more quickly as well. We're also allowing people to access their super up to $50,000. And as Michael points out in relation to the deposit scheme otherwise, this will help young Australians get the deposit that they're needing. Importantly, what we announced yesterday was the missing piece of the picture, which is to allow support for young people to get the finance in the first place so that the banks will lend them the money, and importantly, obviously, to be able to service the loan, to make the repayments. And what we've announced yesterday is that if you vote for Trevor Evans, or if you vote for Maggie Forrester, or if you vote for your Liberal candidate at the next election, you will, as a first home buyer, have an opportunity for the first time to get more of your own money back and to provide support through the tax system to help you service your loan. This is a game changer for young Australians. It will increase the supply of housing, as Michael points out, by 30,000 homes a year. And it'll do that in part because the demand will be there, unit blocks will become more viable to develop, and bringing those extra units, those extra homes online is exactly what is required at the moment. I want to be the Prime Minister for housing, for home ownership and for housing affordability and accessibility. And I'm not going to accept the Prime Minister's lie to the Australian people that somehow building 100,000 fictional homes is going to fix the problem. It's not. We are the only party with a policy at this election which provides support to every Australian straight away from day one with a 25-cent cut to fuel. We are the only party going to the election saying that after that we'll provide $1,200 per person to the average taxpayer, more of your money back, so a tax cut for you to help you through Labor's cost of living crisis. We're going to make sure that we've got a fix which is permanent into the system by increasing the natural gas supply, which brings the wholesale price of gas down by 23%, which will bring the prices of construction, of food, of production and manufacturing down in our country across the board as well. And this policy is about helping young Australians realise the dream of home ownership, which they've lost under this government. And that's what our policy is about. Now, we'll start here and then we'll work our way around. Tim.
Mr Dutton, you'd be aware of criticism from economists in the last 24 hours who argue that, in fact, you're not tackling the supply side and you're driving up the demand side with your policies, so making the problem, if anything, worse. What do you say to them?
We are providing $5 billion for 500,000 new homes. We're cutting the migration program by 25% because Labor's had it at a record high, and that's increased the demand for housing. So we create 100,000 homes in that policy. We now provide another 30,000 homes a year being built that weren't being built under Labor, and the Labor government's got demand side pressures that they're not addressing through supply side, that is extra homes being built. We are the only party that is addressing the supply side. And by providing an opportunity to young Australians, look, I've moved around the country over the course of the last 3 years. There are many messages I've heard of people who are in pain under Labor's cost of living crisis. But it kills me when you hear young Australians just saying, I'm working hard. We're both working hard. We're putting money aside. We just can't afford. We don't think we're ever going to be able to afford a home. That's the common story. Now, I'm not going to accept that as Prime Minister of this country. I want to make sure that we can do everything we can, if we're fortunate enough to win the election, to restore that dream of home ownership. And this is the way that we can do it. A generation ago, It didn't require the same amount of disposable income because housing was cheaper, units were cheaper, and we have to deal with the reality for this generation. And that's exactly what we do through our policy. We hope that Australians can see some light past this dark period of the Albanese government. Help is coming, but people need to vote for the coalition at the next election, and we can deliver that. Yes, mate.
Yourself and Angus Taylor have defended your fiscal discipline by pointing to $100 billion worth of Labor's spending that you oppose. Does this mean, I do have a list of these measures, does this mean that you will repeal all of these measures to help pay for the spending announcements? And does this include the off-budget funds, the electric vehicle tax, and all the funding for Future Made in Australia?
Well, you'll see the costings released closer to the day, but obviously we've done a lot of work listening to Australians, and our priority for Australians is to help them get into home ownership. That's the priority.
You're raising this $100 billion figure as an example of your fiscal discipline, and then you're not even able to tell us that you will repeal those measures and actually bank that money.
As I say, all of that detail is provided in the due course in the run-up to the election. What we've said is that we're not supporting Labor's wasteful spending because I don't want inflation to go up, and a big spending Labor Greens government is going to drive up the cost of inflation, and the cost of interest rates are higher always under Labor. Now, this is the biggest spending government in 40 years. They are the biggest spending government because Labor can't help themselves. They always tax, they spend, and look at what the Victorian Labor Party has done to the economy there. Look at what Anastasia Palaszczuk and Stephen Miles have done in damaging the Queensland economy. We will always be better economic managers, and we will always provide support to families. 30% more people are paying for groceries at the moment. We are going to provide more of people's own money back to them through the $1,200 tax cut. We're going to provide a 25 cent a litre cut on fuel, and we're going to provide an opportunity for young Australians to realise the dream of home ownership again. Yes, mate.
Mr Dutton, speaking overall about house prices and the housing market, would you like house prices to go up or go down?
I want to see them steadily increase. I don't want to see a situation where Labor crashes the economy and somebody who's paid $750,000 for a house today is worth $600,000 in 18 months' time under an Albanese-backed government. That would be a disaster. People will be sitting on a house that is worth less than what their mortgage is. And that's what happened, frankly, in the 80s and 90s when Labor last presided over a recession. Now, Jim Chalmers is talking about a recession in our country and he's panicking at the moment. But Labor can't manage the economy. That much they've proven. And I want to make sure that house prices steadily increase, and we'll do that if we get the supply-demand equation right. But if you flood the market with 1 million people over 2 years, which is a 70% increase on any 2-year period in our history, well, of course, all those people want houses as well, and that's why we're cutting migration so that we can deal with Labor's housing crisis. Yep. Okay. Harry.
What's it like being Mr. Dutton campaign trail and trying to get into housing market?
It's been great being on the campaign trail with him, going all over and seeing all different people in all different industries. I am saving up for a house, and so is my sister Beck, and a lot of my mates, but as you've probably heard, it's almost impossible to get in the current state. So, I mean, we're saving like mad, but it doesn't look like we'll get there in the near future, but we'd love that to change.
Okay, thanks, mate.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
last week you committed...
Mr. Dutton Senior, you were going to say. You confused him.
Last week you recommitted to cutting 100,000 migrants. The current tradie shortfall for migrant trainees is 130,000 right now, and then in 5 years' time it's projected to be 500,000 trainees that are shortfall. Big groups like master builders are saying that the way that you can actually deal with supply constraints is through having an increase in trainees and having skilled migrants come in. So how does that work when you're pledging 100,000 migrants every year?
But we do exactly that. So we are increasing the number of people on the skills list who can come in through with trade qualifications. See, one of the things that the CFMEU did with Labor is they stopped the tradies going onto the list. So you had yoga teachers and all sorts of things under Labor. So we have already said that we're going to prioritise people with the requisite trade skills to come in through the program. Well, in terms of your figures, just to make it clear, we've said that the net overseas migration figure comes down by 100,000 relative to Labor's, but in relation to the permanent migration program, we reduced that by 25%. So that comes down in the first 2 years, it goes up in year 3 and 4. And again, that in total creates another, it brings 100,000 homes into the market for Australians. And don't, we'll have more tradies. We'll have more tradies coming in under our scheme. It depends. Well, it depends on how many applicants there are, and it depends on what demand there is for the skills, and the whole skills list.
There's already a demand for 130,000.
Yeah, but under Labor, they can't come in because they're not prioritised. Under us, they come in. And to the other part of your question, which is a very important point, we've worked with the NBA and HIA and others. Michael's done an amazing job in relation to our engagement with the people who know how to fix this problem, not the CFMEU. They're a core part of the problem. But of course, they donate to the Labor Party, and that's why they have such a disproportionate say and why they've had such a huge negative impact on building over the last couple of years. We're putting in place a scheme which provides a $12,000 wage subsidy to those businesses, those builders and others, as I mentioned before, to make sure that we can increase the completion rates.
But we currently
make
don't
sure
have the builders. We don't have them right now. So how many are you bringing in?
So that we can make sure that we bring those trainees and apprentices in, and that's exactly what we do. Yeah.
Economists have said these policies could be inflationary. Do you think they would be worth it for first-time buyers and Australians if it forces the RBA to keep up rates higher for longer?
Look, a big spending Labor Greens government is a disaster for the economy. We've seen it elsewhere, and we saw it under Julia Gillard. It would be a disaster for families because interest rates would go up, and that much is true. Now, in relation to our policy, we are creating 500,000 new homes through our $5 billion fund to help councils with critical infrastructure. That's an important part of our policy. We are banning foreign buyers for 2 years, which restricts demand for homes. So that is getting the balance right. We are putting extra money in to train trainees and apprentices to build homes, and we're bringing more people in through the migration program with those skills. We're prioritising those skills in the construction sector. We're providing support to young home buyers to get $50,000 of their super to help pull their deposit together. And what we do with this measure is we say to average young Australians who are working hard but who never believe that they'll own a home under the Labor Party, we're going to help you buy that home. And only the Liberal Party can do that at this election. And what it helps people do is deduct the interest on the first $650,000 of their mortgage. And that is a game changer for young Australians. So who have I been listening to? I've been listening to young Australians here in Brisbane, in Ryan, right around the country. And we are going to be the party of home ownership. And that is something the Labor Party can never lay claim to, because under their flagship program at the moment, they haven't built one home. They don't know what they're doing when it comes to management of the economy, and they just adhere to the advice of the CFMEU, which is a disaster. Yes,
median house prices to drop based on your policies, and also the Liberal Party's just released a Labor diss track. Did yourself and Harry listen to that on the way out here? Is this how political advertising is going?
Well, Harry may have. I haven't, but I'm sure the gurus have put together a cracking ad. And if it says something about Mr. Albanese lying, then it's just a recording of fact. The fact is that this Prime Minister has lied in relation to the $275 cut for electricity, lied in relation to bulk billing rates, which have plummeted under his government, lied in relation to building houses when they just haven't built houses, lied to the Australian people when he said that at the last election migration would be managed, and he's created this big Australia policy that Australians knew nothing about. It's created a housing crisis. He promised that electricity prices would go down. They've gone up by $1,300. And the one thing you can believe Mr. Albanese on is if you vote for him at the next election, your cost of electricity and gas will continue to go up by over 30%, and there's no solution to it. This is an economic disaster in the making, and Labor just can't be trusted when it comes to economic management or how to deal with the cost of living crisis.
Do you expect median house prices to drop?
Well, as we've said, I want to see house prices go up, but we need more supply into the market, which is exactly what we're doing. We're bringing on 500,000 more homes than Labor's proposing. We're bringing on, through the cut to the migration program, 100,000 existing homes, which we free up for renters and for first home buyers. Rents have gone up by 18% under Labor, and people are losing faith in this government, and so they should. Sorry, yeah.
Are you planning to act as the bank of mum and dad, like so many Australian families are having to do?
Well, I made the point in my speech yesterday. I don't want to be accepting a situation where only mums and dads who can afford to give their kids help, that they're the kids that can buy homes. It's just not acceptable in our country. I really strongly, firmly believe in home ownership. I've spoken about it, I think, from the first press conference I gave as leader. I spoke about it over my term in Parliament. Home ownership is so critically important. Australians, young Australians, are putting off having kids at the moment because they can't afford rent under Labor and they can't afford to save for a house under Labor. Older Australians who have done nothing more than just worked hard, saved hard for their own retirement, thought that maybe they could give their kids a bit of a hand, you know, $10,000 or $20,000 maybe when they're buying a house. They're now putting off their retirement so that they can stay working for longer to try and get a bit of money to help their kids with a deposit or maybe the monthly repayments. Now, that's what Mr Albanese has created, a huge mess. They've boomed migration, which is cruel housing, and we're going to fix the problem and we're going to help young Australians get back into housing. Yes, mate. Yeah.
Spoken very eloquently about what young Australians are feeling and about Labor's housing crisis, but I'm sure that many young Australians would say they've been calling out for a very long time for action on housing, including during the 9 years in which you were a cabinet minister. Do you concede that potentially your government should have done more over the last 9 years before Labor to solve this housing crisis? And what would you say to young Australians who might feel like you've just discovered?
Why don't I ask Michael to address this, because I think he may have something to say about it.
Absolutely.